Imagine a wild land of rushing rivers and rolling hills, a land dotted with cattle, fish, and animals, a land of freedom, of independence, of life. There are not many places like this, and the cultivation of one can create the most wondrous history. One such land is known by many names, some calling it the Wild Fields or the Wild East, and some calling it the Eurasian Steppe, or more simply, the Steppe. The steppe is a flat grassland that spans almost endlessly, covering a sizable portion of Asia and Eastern Europe. It stretches almost a fifth of the span of the earth, from modern-day Hungary all the way to China. It has been the hub for a plethora of stories, histories, and civilizations. Things like the Silk Road, an expansive trade route from Europe to Asia, was mainly focused through the steppe. Civilizations and empires have arisen en masse throughout its histories, such as the Scythians, the Huns, the Mongols, and the Cossacks. The Cossacks were a legendary group of warriors, countrymen, and adventurers, whose strong history should be recognized throughout the ages. Living in the western part of the Eurasian steppe, in modern-day Ukraine, they influenced much of Eastern European history and culture, and were huge political assets at their peak. However, the steppe they called home had a bloody, despair-filled history. In the 15th century, the Golden Horde, a remnant of the Mongols, began to dissolve. One people that came out of this was the Tatar tribe. These Tatars would soon raid nearby villages and towns, murdering or gathering all of the people to be sold as slaves to the Ottoman Empire's huge successful slave trading market. This became such a widespread and dangerous practice in the area that the people had no choice but to migrate away to safety. Borders were constantly redrawn, villages were ransacked, men, women, and children were killed. Colonization meant death, and soon this once populated place became a political no man's land, a treacherous frontier, a frontier of danger and freedom, which was soon to be conquered. In the late 15th and early 16th century, the Americas had been discovered and were being colonized by the great European nations. This caused a need for wheat and food, greatly supplied by the huge farms in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, Muscovy, and Crimea. In turn, many peasants were forced into serfdom. Serfdom was a practice in which one was tied to a plot of land, usually to farm it. Serfs lacked many of the privileges of freedmen, and weren't even allowed to leave their plot without permission. This caused a lot of peasants and serfs to escape and seek residence elsewhere. Meanwhile, seasonal hunting parties from Poland began exploring this frontier, obtaining food and supplies. Due to newfound Polish Catholicism and repression of traditional Eastern Orthodox Christianity, many men began staying longer and longer. Soon, these frontiersmen began to settle the Wild East. Altogether, over many years, these people would join together and make a name for themselves, known as the Cossacks. Cossacks were adventurers, escapees from serfdom, bandits, freedmen, hunters, rogue Tatars, and anything and everything in between. They had a wide diversity of backgrounds and ethnicities, which contributed to their strong senses of equality, democracy, and culture. Cossacks operated in autonomous groups referred to as hosts. They primarily settled in a few groups, mainly on the Don, Terek, Dnieper, and Ural rivers. The Zaporozhian Cossacks, or Zaporozhian hosts, one of the main groups in this dangerous frontier, was settled along the Dnieper River. Other hosts played important historical roles, such as the Don Cossacks on the Don River, who were largely connected with Russia and its history. The base of the Zaporozhians was on an island beyond the Dnieper River, a fortified settlement called the Syk. This is how they got their name, as Zaporozhian means beyond the rapids, or land beyond the rapids. This Syk proved to be a capital for all of the Cossacks, a symbol of inspiration and strength. There was much to the strong and vibrant Cossack culture. Appearance-wise, most supported the famous single strand of hair with the rest of the head shaved. Another characteristic was a large bushy mustache, a symbol of strength and respect. The Cossacks also frontiered many different mindsets in Europe in the area, one of such ideas being politics. They had a strong sense of equality in all citizens, different genders, different races, all had similar social and political rights. Laws were enforced by elected officers, usually military officers. At times, the Cossacks would elect a great leader known as the hetman. This hetman had great power and great belief from his people, hard to be compared to the rulers of other European nations. This is what caused them to be later referred to as a hetmanate. They were also smart when it came to foreign and external politics. The Cossacks would use a strategy for decades, which consisted of shifting alliances between Polish-Lithuania and Muscovy, depending on which side was better for them. They commonly fought for whichever side showed them the most respect, as this was the key to the Cossack lifestyle. For the Polish in Muscovy, the Cossacks were necessary shields for their long southern borders with the Tatar raiders. Possibly one of the most notable things about the Cossacks, however, is their military strength and power. They were extremely notorious on horseback, and originally were some of the best sailors. They often raided cities along the Black Sea, even reaching as far south as Anatolia. Their strong religious views guided them through war and politics. As in the past, the Polish had driven them farther into the steppe due to the Cossacks' non-compliance to convert from their orthodox ways. This lawless land of rebels began to unsettle the leaders of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. This mindset and the Poles' constant attempts at oppression and integration of the Zaporozhian hosts built up a very tense environment between the two. Over the span of the late 16th century and throughout the 17th century, Polish-Lithuania was plagued with revolts from the Zaporozhians. All Cossacks began to come together in a revolution led by Bogdan Khmelnytsky, famously known as the Khmelnytsky Uprising. Being the son of a Cossack officer in the Polish-Lithuanian military, he fled to the Zaporozhian Sich after getting into a land dispute with a Pole that turned dangerous. This served as a final display of Polish oppression, and that no Cossack was safe and no Cossack was protected by Polish law and aristocracy. Rising through their ranks and being elected by the people as hetman in 1648, he proved himself a great leader and politician. Khmelnytsky made an alliance with the Tatars in Crimea on their southern border, joining together to form a great army. They destroyed Polish-Lithuanian forces in 2 grand battles, which sparked the popular uprising throughout Ukraine and Polish-Lithuania. As the years of religious and social oppression backfired on the Poles, oppressed peasants began supporting the Cossacks and participating in the rebellion. Khmelnytsky had now expanded the Cossacks' territory from their narrow strip in Zaporozhye to the great lands of modern Ukraine. Much struggle ended in a Cossack retreat, which after poor diplomacy negotiations from the new Polish king led to a different turn of events. Khmelnytsky signed an agreement in 1654 at the town of Pereyaslav. It consisted of an alliance with Russia under Tsar Alexei Mikhailovich, which led them to enter war with Poland as well. The war continued for the following years, ending in a stalemate after Khmelnytsky's death in 1657. The replacing hetman, Ivan Vychovsky, signed the Treaty of Hadiak, which finally severed ties with Moscow. Khmelnytsky himself was seen as a hero to the Orthodox Church for liberating all Orthodox Christians, though the whole thing stemmed from an individual and private dispute. Throughout the coming decades and centuries, much more happened with the Zaporozhian Cossacks. Other Cossacks and hosts continued to play major roles in history, even up to the First World War. Though finally dissolved by Russia in the 18th century, the Zaporozhians proved a symbol of inspiration and innovation. Not only did they frontier the Nemean task of colonizing the wild steppe, but in ideologies as well, such as culture, government, and equality, and integrated hundreds of ethnicities and cultures. Their notorious military, land and sea, made them the cowboys, pirates, and colonists of their Homeric conquest. They became one of the first to rebel against Polish-Lithuania, becoming an icon of revolution itself. These powers saw them as necessary, but a bit barbaric, which eventually led to the plethora of uprisings against them. Though neglected to be studied in common history, the Zaporozhian Cossacks' influence on the region was grandiose, sealing them as legends.